All right, so this will be interesting to see which one it is. This is my final tip calculator, and I do have a folder out there with today's date on it. I started changing a whole bunch of stuff, and again, I'm not sure. There's some stuff in there I wish I wouldn't have done, but every time I tried to remove it, it started to remove my interface, and finally I said the hell with it, so I just left it in there. So there's more stuff that's actually in there than is needed. That said, let's see if I run it again, if it works. And then we're going to go right into the next one. So everybody's got a copy of this, correct? This handout that I gave you? All right. We're going to start going over that. Literally, it's 141 pages, and my goal is between today and Wednesday at the latest to be through the first 80 pages. If you might say, oh, geez, there's so much in there that you already know. They said this is an if statement. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. So we're not going to spend any time on that. Okay? So let's run it and see what it looks like. Like I said, it did work earlier. If it doesn't work now, then it doesn't work now. That's not what I want. Yes, it is. All right, so if I come here and I put $10, see what happened? All right, $100. All right, so 10% tip, 15, 20% tip, add them together. I can play with a scroll bar. Notice right now, it's $119 at 19%, and it works. So as far as I could tell, it all worked. All right, again, I'm not sure exactly what I did to make it work when it didn't work at home. I really don't know. But if it's going to work, not work at home and work here, I can live with that. All right. So again, you all have that. You all have that if you go out to the web or the folder for the class, and there's a folder with today's date on it. Just so you know, and I mentioned this the other day, but I'm saying it one more time. Literally, I just grabbed that copy that I just showed you, and I dragged it out here. So that's why I can tell you that it's there. The folder for today has got a few things in it. Okay, it's got this, which is what I just showed you, the final tip calculator. All right, it's got Swift, and again, this is that 463-page PDF from Apple, and it's got Bullseye, and that's the beginning of what we're going to be working on right now. It's about the first 80 pages. All right, there's going to be a couple things that are right near when we get to around page 80. All right, that was after New Orleans scored again, and finally I just said an expletive, and my dog, I scared the hell out of her. So I just decided at that time, my wife goes, "You're going to bed?" And I said, "Well, I'm not watching this." So I just stopped. I watched the World Series instead. But that's there. And by the end of the period today, I'll show you what I hope we'll get to. And I've already got it. I've already, like I said, worked through about the first 80 pages of this. So this is what I've got right now. All right. When you get to about page 80, that's when they have you do the aesthetic things. So right now, it's not going to be pretty. Everybody hear that? It's not going to be pretty at all. Plus, we're going to do a few things that they talk about in this book. In a way, it's going to seem like we're going backwards. All right? Because we're going to do a real simple little thing at the beginning. Don't worry about it. Because they do a much better job of explaining than I think I have in the past to you. So I think it'll help to go over this stuff. All right, so there it is. Run. Whoops. My niece is, she's something in the Air Force, and she's stationed in Alaska. It's the first time in like 10 months she's been home. So she met my wife and with her mom and my wife's mom, etc., and they're gambling right now in Madison. So if I'm not back tomorrow, my wife won $1 million. All right? Not going to hold out a lot of hope, but just in case. Oh, this is going to work funky. Again, if you feel more comfortable not keying it in right now, but just watching what we're going through, that's going to be totally up to you. All right. I had this last night too, where it would come up like this, and there'd be nothing in the simulator. But then when I'd close it, it would open up another copy down here, and that copy would have the program. I'm just going to let that run for a little bit. Okay. I'm going to hide it for right now. All right. So I do not have this in PDF that I can put online, okay? Because I forgot to do that. But and I don't even know if I have a PDF reader on this machine or not, to be honest with you. So we'll just go by with what I've got and what you've got in front of you. Okay, these are yours to keep. All I'm going to ask is if you don't want them, just toss them, okay? If you don't want them for some reason. I think this is really well done. This is actually a book by this guy, and this is the first chapter. He's got about 7 or 8, no, I shouldn't say 7 or 8. I think there's 5 projects you create in the book, and the book is about 750 pages. All right, it's not the book I decided to go with for spring because it's not a book on Swift. It's a book on iOS development. One thing I do want to show you, though, and hopefully it didn't kick me off of the wireless. All right. There is a site out there, and it's called RayWenderlich.com. The reason I'm telling you this, okay, is the person who wrote this handout that I just gave you works for Ray Wenderlich. The guy has got tons of stuff out there, both for Android and iOS development. Okay, he offers some stuff for free and some stuff you have to pay for. I'm looking at it this way. I'm covering my ass right now in case anybody tried to ever get me in trouble for printing out those copies. He does say in there you get it for free on that copy because that one is online. But you're supposed to go out and have to register for a site. I didn't really want to take the time for all of us to have to do that right now. All right, so I sort of registered for all of us. And actually, notice he's got if you looked at the previous slide, 580 tutorials, literally. He breaks down, and he'll do a whole tutorial on just how to do one thing that you might think is pretty small, but like working with table views in iOS. If you don't know what those are, don't worry about it. But I'm just saying, he breaks the stuff down like that. He writes a lot of the stuff, and he's got people working for him also that do a lot of the stuff. Okay? And he did not have a Swift book available when I had to have book orders in. Then I found out they changed book orders, and technically they're not due until this Friday, where I had been told earlier they were due on October 15th. So just in case you care, and if you don't care, sorry, I'm taking up 2 minutes of your life that you'll never get back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you go back and change that for your book order? In case they do that, so?
Let's put it this way. I think the stuff that I've done has already been put into the system. This is the book that I'm going with. It's a Dytel book. I've used Dytel books before. Dytel, for lack of better words, is a book factory. Harvey Dytel is the dad. Paul Dytel is the son. And Abby Dytel, I don't know if it's a daughter or Paul's wife. They're all very intelligent people. Paul has got his degree from MIT. I've gotten tapes of his before and looked at him. He's really good. All right. He's about as dynamic as I am, so you don't get him because he's dynamic, but he really knows his stuff. All right. And right now, this is a book, running through my publisher. He basically has told me that he's going to send me this one, and he's already given me the first 5 or 6 chapters. That's why I'm going with that, because it's given me something as a baseline to start with. Most of the other stuff, it's still in development work, and you have to fight with people to get any kind of an electronic copy. All right, that's why I'm going with this. And if it turns out that the book stinks, when you do your course evaluations, you're going to write down the book stinks. All right, then it won't be used again. All right, there are a lot of new Swift books coming out. Okay.
All right, but again, I'd suggest if you get the time, just to go over to raywenderlich.com. I'm trying to look in. I think that might be him. I don't remember. But I've gone, like I said, I've gone through a bunch of his stuff before. This is, if you look over here, see where it says receive a free Epic tutorial for signing up for his newsletter? That's what I gave you. So if you want to do that, you can go out to his site. You can go right over here. All right, you can, if you want your own copy or whatever, if you want to get his stuff. And he's not obnoxious either. Some of these people send you stuff every other day. With him, it's about once a month. All right, and he's got an opt-out on there too if you don't like his stuff. I am going to actually check this out. It says we're running an iOS conference next February. Learn how it is different than other iOS. I'm hoping it's good, and I'm hoping it's someplace that's not near Janesville, Wisconsin. So if I ask if I can go, they'll let me go. All right. 3 years ago, they let me go out to San Diego, and that was kind of cool, except the bad news was that the whole time I was there, it was February, and the high was like 50. All right. About 10 years ago, no, it's even more than that, closer to 15, I was signed up to go to a conference. I shouldn't be saying this on the tape. I was signed up to go for a conference, and it was a class. Class got canceled. It was in Chicago. And the guy said, I'll tell you what, if you are willing to take this class in Arizona, all right, I'll pay for your airline. And they did. So we wrote it, and the boss at the time and we had a really good relationship. It was 50 then also. They all thought I was nuts in Arizona because I was swimming in the pool when it was 50. I didn't care because it was the middle of winter here, and it was terrible. And I knew, I called my wife, no, it's snowing like crazy. Good, I'm going out swimming. All right, so I did. All right. All right, so let's do this. Start up Xcode if you don't have it running, please. Still isn't running. I'm still not sure why. Yeah, well, we'll have to keep working on that. But again, get into Xcode, and I'm going to literally stop this. So I'm going to close this project, and I'm going to start it brand new. Are you sure you want to close it? Yeah, stop tasks and start. Yeah. Let's.
Are we finishing the calculator?
No, I gave it to you. You can do whatever you want to do with it. Okay?
So just close this.
Yeah. All right. So on this handout, what they show you on the second page, or it's page 3 here, is just that's the table of contents. So you can read that whenever you get around to it. All right. The author mentions on page 5, he says here halfway down on the page in the introduction, it's not my aim with this series to teach you all the ins and outs of iPhone and iPad development. So the idea behind this book is if you get it, you're not going to become an iPhone, iPad expert. He tries to give you enough that he gives you a good start, and then he kind of just says, now get going and do something. Says you just need to master the essential building blocks of Objective-C. So that's his idea. All right. With that, again, I'm taking for granted that you have this handout. You can please turn up just for a second all the way to page 10. All right. We're going to literally start writing code in about 2 or 3 minutes, but first. What you see if you look on page 10 is if you look right in the middle of the page, you may or may not have ever seen that before, that's the first programming language I learned. That's assembler. Assembler was kind of the child of machine language. Machine language is shown underneath the assembler, where it says, actually, this is what the computer sees. That's the way people used to have to code. All right? And what I did, I wrote programs like the one that you see in the middle of the page. All right. What we want is something more similar to what you show on the bottom of page 10 and going on to page 11. All right. That's, again, why you use a language like this. All right. Turning up to page 12 and taking a look there. That's the finished product. My hope is by no later than the end of next week, everybody will have that done. Everybody will have that working. Okay? Plus, you'll still have some time that if for some reason something didn't work, you'll be able to have some time to go and take a look at it. All right. So what the author says, and he'll give you along the way here, he'll say, hey, I don't want to do everything. So one of the first things he does is he says, take a look at that game and figure out
what you'd need to do to make it work. Okay? If you take a look at the picture there, really either the one on page 12 and the one on page 13, hopefully if you look at the one here that's on page 12, you can all figure out what I'm about to tell you. That is where it says put the bullseye as close as you can to, that's a label. Where it's got the number 44 up there, that's a label. Down below that, where it's got the number 1, that's a label. Where it has the number 100, that's a label. Where it has the slider with a little bullseye on it, that's a slider. All right? Yep, there's a button right there. And there's a score. Where it says score, that's a label. Where it's got the 0, that's a label. Where it says round, that's a label. Where it says 1, that's a label. Where it's got the I and where it's got the arrow, those are both buttons. All right, so in other words, as you start to think about what you need, that's what he's telling you. And the idea is, if you look now on the graphic that's on page 13, the idea is if you try to get as close as you can. So right here, where it says on page 12, it says you want to get as close as you can with that slider to 44. Well, if the slider was right in the middle, it would be on 50. Does that make sense? So it'll be pretty close to that. All right? And that's what we're going to end up doing in here. So he mentions on the bottom of page 13, second paragraph from the bottom, when I start working on a new app, I make a list of all the important pieces of functionality that I need. So that's what he asks you to do. And then he says, but in case you didn't want to or couldn't or whatever, if you turn up to page 14, okay, that's what he says here, is that's the kind of stuff that he's going to need to do throughout the life of the program. All right? So we're going to follow the steps that are in the book. Like I said, even though it might seem at first like we're regressing a little bit, he does a really good job of explaining some things that I either glossed over or plain didn't go over. So I think it's going to help to do this. Again, when he talks about this is an if statement, etc., I'm going to skip all that stuff. All right? And he also talks about the difference between two numbers. And as I was reading it the first time, I marked mine up and I wrote, why don't you just tell him about absolute value? And he does that for 3 or 4 pages. And then he goes, but there's this thing called absolute value, so I'm going to skip all that stuff too. That's why I said there's probably a good 15 or 20 pages in here we're just not going to go over because you already know this stuff. All right? But let's do this. Let's start up a new Xcode project. It will be this. Now, this is what's interesting. I think he did it like this for a reason, but what we could choose right now, we're not going to, but what we could choose in here would be like a master detail type of application, but we're still going to choose single view, which means that we're only going to have one view controller. Later, we're going to add another view controller, so you can see how to add that directly yourselves. The other thing, too, is, again, you don't have to turn back to it, but if you look at that picture, we're only going to set this thing up so that it works in landscape mode. And I'll show you how to turn off portrait mode. It's just literally a setting. Okay, but we're going to do that because when you run this, if you go and change it over to portrait, after you set up everything for landscape, it looks really, really ugly. So we're just not going to do that. We're going to assume it's a game and you only want to play it in landscape mode. All right? Now, again, I'm going to follow his lead. So I'm going to choose single view. We're going to click next. The product name will be Bullseye, one word with a big U and a big E. The organization name is fine. The company identifier is fine. Notice he recommends you put a class prefix on here. All right, you don't have to do this. If you put this on here, your view controller is now going to be called Bullseye View Controller. See the difference? If you don't like that, or if you want to put BE, or you want to put your initials, or you don't want to put anything there, it doesn't really matter. All the screenshots and stuff that he does throughout this chapter of this book here, assume that you're putting Bullseye right there. But again, if you don't want it for whatever reason, then don't. All right. Now, I've already got a Bullseye, so I can either save it to someplace other than my desktop, or as I'm just going to call mine Bullseye 2. You don't have to do that. Right? And usually the recommendation is, again, when you look on here, that if you've got your choice and there's only one of these, most people build for iPhone. It's much easier to scale up from an iPhone to an iPad. The universal means it'll work on either one. We're going to do a bunch of stuff in here. And I've got to find some of the stuff that I have because it's not all here right now. But you're going to learn how to put graphics in. All right, so you're going to learn how to work with that. You'll learn how to create another view controller. So there's a lot of stuff to do. All right, it's all walked through in here. That's why I decided that I thought, well, what you could do is you could have the PDF open on your screen and you can work that way, but it might be hard going back and forth, and that's why I made the copies this morning. All right, and going along with that, just so you know, this is for the class tomorrow morning, but I'm just telling you all now, if you don't know this already, for the Joomla book, I have retaped the lectures for chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. They've all been retaped. They're all out there. All right, I'm not going to redo 9 because that's the thing on permissions. All right, and that was just a cluster. But everything is working fine. Everything looks fine right now. I'm going to do 10 tomorrow morning, 11 on Wednesday, and 12 on Thursday. So the book will be done. All right, the redoing of it. I came in here on Saturday and I did chapters 6, 7, and 8. All right, it was better than going home and finding out it was $266 to fix a spring on my garage door that was that big. All right. Okay. Well, I've also found out, and I didn't realize this before, that when one of my kids was pulling into the garage, not only did she hit the side of the garage, but she must have backed up and went in with the garage door shut. Because she's also pushed in 2 of the panels on the garage door. And it couldn't be me because I've never, ever in 19 years parked on that side, ever. It wouldn't be my wife because she's not an idiot. All right, so it was one of my kids. And I'm pretty sure I know which one it is, but it doesn't matter. All right, so we're going to keep it set for iPhone. We're going to click Next. We're going to tell it where we want it to save this, which on your desktop is fine. Now, it's possible, I think Mike Lemon said this last week, but it's possible you may already have that out on the desktop. I don't know. It is possible you might have a copy of it out there already. I don't know. I tried to clean all these things up at the beginning of the semester. I may have left something there. All right. So I'm just going to choose desktop. Again, we don't care really about the Git repository, so I'm just going to click Create, and boom, we've got our new project. So we've done everything on pages 16, 17, 18, 19. If we were to run this right now, which I'm not going to do, that's what's on page 19 in the book when they tell you to run it. All right. So I'm just going to jump up all the way to page 20. And if you do the same, I would be appreciative. I'm going to go till about 350. And at 350, then we'll take a break. And, we'll go after, we'll continue on after that. Again, if you didn't hear me say this before, for some reason, these files are exponentially bigger doing them on the Mac here under their Camtasia than they are doing them on these machines here. All right, the one I did last week was, the first one I did was 900 meg. The one I did last week was like 860 meg, and it was barely a half an hour long. All right, that wouldn't even be that would be more like about 200 meg if I was doing it on an Intel machine. So, all right, if you care, they also mention here on page 20 in this gray box, and the author does this all over the place. He says, Xcode will first compile your source and then translate it into something you can understand. The compiler is the part, etc. The whole process is what's known as building an app. One of the things they mention in here, and I've seen it also in other handouts, is let's suppose that John's working on his project, and he's been very dutiful. He does a good job. He does a little code. He saves it and he runs it. Now he runs it and he forgets to save. All right, Xcode is supposed to save before it runs your program. It's supposed to save so it has your newest changes. All right. That said, if you've made a bunch of changes and you haven't saved and you go to run it and the machine locks, it may or may not have saved your changes. Did you hear what I said? So I've seen that happen before. And then somebody starts swearing about Macs and whatever. But just so you know, it's always a good idea to just do a quick file save before you go in and run the program. All right. So they tell us to come out to our storyboard right away. So let's single click on the storyboard to bring it out here. And again, what we're going to do now will seem like this is simpler than what we did before. Now, just bear with me. All right. Because I actually think you'll learn something by doing this. So the first thing they want us to do is to come out to our storyboard. And it now looks similar to what you see on page 22. And they want us to go down into our object library and search. So we just come down here and type in button.
You've done this before. And there's your button. All right? Now, I'm going to recommend, we're going to put a button on the screen right now. Okay? This, what we're building right now, this is Bullseye. We're building the game. But we're not going to get into, we're actually putting the game stuff in there for probably till right around the break time. Okay, so we're going to put some stuff in here right now that for now is going to seem almost dumb to put in. So add a button and put it somewhere around where I'm putting mine here. So somewhere in here. All right. Again, we're going to change the orientation later, so exactly where we put it doesn't matter. But somewhere around where I've got mine, if I want to center it a little bit more, etc., I can do that. All right. And what they ask you to do is to double-click it. In fact, let's do something different if you haven't done this before. Instead of double-clicking the button like this, whoops, didn't want to do that. Instead of double-clicking the button and typing in hit me like they tell you to do, all right, let's click on the button and let's go over here to our attributes inspector. All right, and click on that. And over here where it says button, let's change it there. Just so you get some experience working on this stuff. So again, you can double click on it here and type in hit me, or you can single click on it, go over to the attributes inspector, and where it says button right there, just manually change it to hit me. And I guess it's hit me with an exclamation point. All right, and again, you might have to widen your button out then, because hit me is wider than the word button. All right. Don't need this for now. There. I'm taking for granted everybody can see that okay. And again, I'm just following the steps that are in here. Now, they do mention on page 23, right below the picture of the button, it says, note that in iOS 7, buttons no longer have borders. You can do that, but it takes a little bit of work. We're not going to talk about that right now. In an earlier class period, I gave you a URL to a 2-minute and 40-some second long video where the guy does a good job of saying, hey, if you want your buttons to be rounded again, and he shows you how to do it. All right? One of the major changes in iOS 7 is that button borders are now gone, at least for standard buttons. All right. So, again, we could run the program right now, but it's not doing anything yet because we haven't put in any code. Turning to page 24, that's where the author talks about the autosave. All right, I'm not going to read it to you. You can see it. All right, so what we're going to do next, again, I'm following the steps on pages 24 and 25. So if you look up on the screen here, take your mouse, single click on bullseyeviewcontroller.h. Single click on it to bring that file up. All right, we're going to make changes to this as we go on. We'll make changes both to the bullseyeviewcontroller.h file, and we'll make changes to the bullseyeviewcontroller.m file as we go along. All right, you'll notice it looks very similar to what's shown in the book. And on the top of page 25, they want us to come down here and right there. So I'm going to hit enter twice. So I'm on line 13. You do the same. And again, I'm going to key it in, and the same stuff is in your book, or the handout, on the top of page 25. Now, mine doesn't look the way it does in the book, but just so you see this. All right? As soon as I typed in the minus and I moved over, it's not mandatory you put a space right there. So if you want to run them together, you can. But as soon as I put in the parenthesis and I put in IBA, that came up. Have you all figured out the IntelliSense on here already? If you hit the tab key, it'll fill it up for you. All right, and I did that. But then it came up and it added all this other stuff. Well, I put the show alert in. I didn't put this in. That was put in there for me automatically. All right, and I don't want it because it doesn't show it there on page 25 at the top of the page. I just want show alert with nothing after it. Again, shortcut, if you don't know that, is I can hold down on, what is it, control, and I can keep moving. No, it's not. I don't know which one it is. But I can just hold down on, no, yeah, on shift, and I can keep moving over, etc. All right, and semicolon. Oops. So that's what yours should look like. All right. Now, does it make sense to you that what this is literally saying, all right, is I am going to now be responsible
in my viewcontroller.m file, we're creating a method that's called show alert, and that show alert is going to basically be returning an IB action, which means there's no return statement in it. Does that make sense? Because that's kind of what they explain in the book here when they talk a little bit about view controllers and the like on page 25. All right, again, I'm not going to read to you. What we'll get into next semester is we'll do some stuff like they show on the bottom of page 25. We might not make a recipe list, but we'll make something like this. All right. And what they mention there is if you look and you've got what? Fries, salad, smoothie, pancakes. All right. So you've got one view controller that's going to hold all those values, and if you click any one of those 4 buttons, they're each going to have their own view controller. So what the author is saying here is that a view controller, all right, is the equivalent of a screen. Everybody hear that? And the reason that that's important is what you'll hear tomorrow is in Java and in Android land, they call that an activity. That's the equivalent of a screen. All right? All right. There's some really good stuff on page 26. Again, it's not my intention to read to you, but the author does a really nice job of just walking you through what he does as he does it. And he talks kind of in general there about what controllers are and why you need them. Okay. All right, making connections on the bottom of page 26. It says the line of source code you just added lets the controller know that, lets the interface builder know that the controller has a show alert action, which will presumably show an alert view pop-up, and that's what we're going to do in just a minute. What they want you to do is, as it says there, click the main storyboard file, single click it to go back to your storyboard. All right. And it says click on that hit me button just once to select it, so it makes it active. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to end up dragging from there to the view controller. If you don't see a view controller right now on your screen, and you don't see one on mine, you may or may not have one down here. You've got 3 shapes, and I think it's either the middle shape or the leftmost shape is a yellow one. If you put your mouse over it, it'll say view controller on it. All right, if you don't have that, you'll need that for what we're about to do next. All right? And notice I can click here, and if I click there, it shows the stuff up here, and if I click again, it removes it, and all I want to do here, there. So you might have to swipe up or swipe down in order to be able to see it, but it's the one right here. Does that make sense? What we're going to do now is we want to establish a connection. All right? And there's different ways to establish connections, and there's different kinds of connections that you can establish. All right? So, page 27, just following the steps that are there. It says, once you're on the bullseye view controller, let go of the mouse. So what they want you to do is to take your mouse and click on the button here, like we've already done. So take that and click on there. And then once you have, to make it active, as we've done before, hold down on that control key and drag from there over to here. All right? Control and drag. So control, I'm holding down on the control key, I'm dragging. Okay, it didn't like what I did. All right, and I'm putting it on, come on, to that view controller, and I'm letting go. All right, if when you let go it looks the way this looks up here, you've done it correctly. And we're not in any hurry, so. Look, we've already gone through 27 pages. And what we want to do here is you want to highlight the show alert that's right there. Now, there are other ways of doing this other than the way we just looked at. Just so you know, there's other ways of doing it. But directly or indirectly, they all involve that control clicking. So, you know, it's, well, geez, show us another way. But it's going to be almost the same thing. All right, so again, there are multiple ways of doing the same thing.
Click on show alert.
Yes. So on the middle of page, right after the picture that's shown there, second paragraph at the bottom on page 27, it says, click on Show Alert to select it. This instructs Interface Builder to make a connection between the button and Show Alert. From now on, whenever the button is tapped, the Show Alert action will be performed. This is how you make buttons and other controls do things. You define an action in the controllers.h file, and then you make a connection in the Interface Builder. So again, as I just told you to do, I'm going to click on there also. All right. And after you've done that, if you need to check and make sure that it was done correctly, this isn't in your book, okay? But after you've done that, what you can do is you can take your mouse and put it all the way over on the end there where it says the Connections Inspector. See where my mouse is? Way up here. And if I put it on there, and I click, it shows me the connections. Now, I could have done that first. In other words, with this button highlighted, I could have clicked the Connection Inspector. Everybody hear that? I could have done that. Then I would have had to have come down here and found the touch up inside. That's like a button click. I would have had to have clicked right there, held down on my control, and dragged over to there. That would do the same thing as what I just had you do. So again, there's more than one way of doing the same action. All right? So that's what I'm showing you here at the bottom of page 27. It says you can see that the connection was made by going to the Connection Inspector, and it's the same stuff that you see on page 28.
So, does touch up mean the action happens after you release your finger? Is that what that's trying to say?
Touch up inside, literally, all I've ever read about it is it's the equivalent of a button click.
This is a touchdown. Well,
Yeah.
It happens immediately a touchdown, and maybe touch up gets actually with the finger.
I think that it's the equivalent of
Touch.
just, yes, I believe so. Yeah. All right. So as they mention here on page 28, in the Sent Events section, the touch up inside is now connected to the Show Alert. If you wanted to remove the connection, you click the little X icon. All right. It says, but don't do that right now. Well, I had problems trying to remove it because I put in too many connections on the tip calculator. So whenever I would click where the X was, it would remove the connection, but it would also remove the control. So I had to create the control again and then make the connection again. So and that's why, whatever. All right. So as it says, you can also directly drag from any of these events. So if we wanted to do something, for example, right now we're not going to, but on the did end on exit, we could just click our mouse right there in that circle, hold down and control, and drag back to the button. All right, same kind of thing. I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't had time to look up most of these, so I can't tell you what a lot of them mean. All right. All right, acting on the button. We're going to do this, and we're going to take a break. So it says you now have a screen with a button that you have hooked it up to an action named Show Alert. So now we want to go into the .m file. Again, I'm following the instructions that are on page 28 in your book. So I'm going into the viewcontroller.m file right there. All right. And it tells you to add the following to the bottom of your file just before the @end statement. I'm going to add all the code on the bottom of page 28, and I'm asking that you do the same. All right. We're going to do that. We're going to run it, and then we're going to take a break. So again, right before the @end statement, and just so you know, it doesn't matter in here, if you look up on the screen, it doesn't matter where you put any of your code. So for some reason, I wanted to come in here and put it up here at the top, or put it in between these two, it doesn't matter. There's something to be said for putting your stuff in an area that's not around the area that the system puts in for you. But if you decide, you can put it basically anywhere you want. So let's do that. Now, it would have been much easier if I had just gone back over to the .h file and copied it.
And just so you know, everybody see all the code that's on the bottom of the page and on the top of the next page here? Where it starts with UI alert equals alert view, and it ends on other button titles equal nil. That's all one line of code that you could put over multiple lines. Technically, this whole thing has what? 2 lines of code in the entire method. All right, so let's put that in and we'll take a break then. After you've done that, please do a file save and run it, and it should look, hopefully I didn't make any mistakes typing, and it should look like this then. So when you click hit me, that's what you get. All right. So it's 3:55. Let's take a break and we'll come back at 4:05, please.